The conference room smelled like new money and older lies. Wednesday morning, 10:23 a.m., and my sister Megan stood at a whiteboard explaining revenue projections to 3 utility company representatives. Behind her, PowerPoint slides showed my solar farm, 40 acres of panels generating 12 megawatts, rebranded as Hartwell Family Energy Solutions. Renewable projects are family-owned, Megan told the utilities with practiced confidence. My sister and I co-manage operations. We're authorized to negotiate power purchase agreements on behalf of the partnership. The 20-year lease contracts I'm offering will provide your companies with reliable clean energy at competitive rates. I watched from my truck in the parking lot, laptop open, monitoring the fraudulent pitch via the building's guest Wi-Fi that Megan had carelessly left unsecured. 29 years old, watching my older sister collect advance payments for energy contracts she had no authority to negotiate. Behind the utility reps, I could see Dad reviewing contract terms. Mom was nodding along, playing the supportive family member. They'd already spent $340,000 in advance lease payments Megan had collected over 3 months from smaller utilities. My phone buzzed. State Energy Regulatory Board. Ms. Alexis Hartwell? This is Director Chin from SERB Compliance Division. We're reviewing power purchase agreements filed by Hartwell Family Energy Solutions. Your solar farm permit shows single-owner operation, but these contracts claim partnership authority. Can you verify the ownership structure? I kept my voice low. I'm sole owner. Commercial solar permit issued to Alexis Hartwell only June 2021. My sister has no ownership stake, no operational authority, and no right to negotiate energy contracts. Professional silence. Ms. Hartwell, we're seeing 8 power purchase agreements totaling $2.1 million in contracted payments over 20 years. All signed by Megan Hartwell claiming partnership authority. If she falsified ownership status, these contracts are fraudulent and we're required to report to state prosecutors. She's also collected $340,000 in advance payments from 3 utilities. Money my family has already spent. I pulled up Megan's bank records. She'd been sloppy with financial security. I'm forwarding documentation now. Original permit, ownership records, and evidence she's been operating a fraudulent leasing scheme for 3 months. Send everything. We'll initiate emergency review. If utilities sign contracts based on false ownership representations, we're looking at wire fraud and securities violations. Director Chen's tone sharpened. Get here within the hour if you can. This is moving fast. I hung up, sent the documentation. Then I forwarded copies to the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division and the State Attorney General's office. Time to end Megan's renewable energy fraud. The Energy Board office was institutional and serious. Director Chin was mid-50s, had the look of someone who'd spent decades catching people who thought regulations were suggestions. She spread contracts across the table, 8 power purchase agreements, all signed by Megan claiming partnership authority for a solar farm she didn't own. These contracts obligate utilities to pay $2.1 million over 20 years for solar energy from your farm. Chin pointed to the signature blocks. Your sister represented herself as co-owner with full authority to negotiate. She provided fake partnership documents showing 50-50 ownership split. She forged those. I showed Chin my permit records. Commercial solar operation license issued solely to me. I designed the farm, secured financing, managed construction, handle all operations. Megan has never been involved except to tell people at family gatherings that we have a solar business. And the advance payments? Chin pulled up financial records. 3 utilities paid $340,000 total based on these fraudulent contracts. Standard practice for long-term energy agreements. Advance against future delivery. Money my family spent immediately. Dad bought an RV. Mom renovated their kitchen. Megan paid off student loans and put a down payment on a condo. I showed Chin the family group texts where Megan had distributed funds as partnership profits. Chin was already on her phone. I need asset freezes on these accounts immediately. State Energy Fraud Investigation. She provided names and details. And contact the utilities who signed these contracts. They've purchased energy from a supplier who can't legally deliver because the contracts are fraudulent. She hung up, looked at me. Your sister created contracts obligating you to deliver energy you never agreed to provide. If you can't fulfill these agreements, the utilities can sue for breach. Even though you didn't sign anything. Can they? Probably not successfully, but they'll try. They paid money based on fraudulent contracts. They'll want someone to blame. Chin pulled up regulatory code. However, state law is clear. Energy contracts require verified ownership authority. Your sister's fraud doesn't create obligations for you. The utilities should have verified ownership before signing. Small comfort, but something. The FBI arrived at Megan's office at 2:34 p.m. I wasn't there, but Director Chin called with updates. Megan was arrested for wire fraud and securities violations. Federal agents seized her computers, phones, and boxes of documents showing months of systematic fraud. Mom and Dad were arrested at 3:15 p.m. Conspiracy, money laundering. The RV was impounded. The kitchen renovation was photographed as evidence of proceeds from fraud. By 5 p.m., the utilities had been notified their contracts were fraudulent. Legal teams were mobilizing. 3 companies that had paid advance fees filed immediate lawsuits against Megan personally and against Hartwell Family Energy Solutions, an entity that existed only in Megan's fraudulent documents. The utilities that had signed but not yet paid canceled their contracts and filed fraud complaints with state and federal regulators. My phone exploded with family calls. I ignored most except my cousin Jake, who'd apparently been promised a job managing Megan's expanding renewable energy portfolio. Alexis, what's happening? Megan's been arrested. She told me I'd be operations manager for the new solar farms she was building. There are no new solar farms. There's one farm which I own. Megan created fake partnership documents and fraudulent energy contracts. She collected $340,000 in advance payments and is facing federal wire fraud charges. I felt tired. She promised you a job that didn't exist for a company that was never real. But she showed me business plans, revenue projections, partnership agreements. All fake. She forged partnership documents claiming 50-50 ownership of my solar farm, then used those forgeries to negotiate energy contracts she had no authority to sign. The State Energy Board discovered the fraud during routine compliance review. Jake was silent. Then, the job offer was fake. Yes. Everything was fake except the solar farm, which is mine, and the $340,000 she stole from utilities through fraudulent contracts. The federal prosecutor was a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Moore who specialized in securities fraud. She laid out the charges: wire fraud, securities violations, false statements to regulators, conspiracy to commit fraud. Potential sentence: 25 years federal prison. Your sister created a sophisticated scheme targeting renewable energy incentives, Patricia explained. She researched energy contracts, created convincing forgeries, manipulated utility companies into paying advances for power they'd never receive. This was calculated fraud, not opportunistic crime. Will utilities come after me? They'll try. But state energy law is clear. You're not bound by contracts you didn't authorize. Your sister's fraud doesn't create legal obligations for you. Patricia pulled up case law. However, you should expect civil suits. Utilities will argue you benefited from the fraud, that you should have prevented it, that you're liable somehow. They'll lose, but they'll try. Great. Welcome to being a fraud victim. Patricia's expression was sympathetic but firm. Your sister's crime creates problems for everyone in her radius. That's how fraud works. Megan pled guilty 6 months later. 8 years federal prison, $2.1 million in restitution to the utilities, forfeiture of all assets. Mom and Dad got 2 years probation, joint restitution responsibility, and their house was seized to partially satisfy civil judgments. The utilities that paid advances recovered $180,000 through asset seizures. The remaining $160,000 was gone, spent on RVs and kitchens and student loans that couldn't be reversed. 3 utilities sued me personally. I won all 3 cases. Judge ruled I had no knowledge of the fraudulent contracts and no legal obligation to fulfill agreements I never authorized. The utilities appealed. Lost again. Finally settled by dismissing all claims. My solar farm continued operating exactly as designed. Generating clean energy. Selling power through legitimate contracts I'd negotiated. The 40 acres Megan tried to convert into her fraudulent family partnership. I never spoke to Megan again. She sent letters from prison explaining how she'd just wanted to expand the family business, and how I was selfish for not sharing the solar farm profits. I returned them unopened. Mom and Dad tried reconciliation. Apologetic emails about how Megan had convinced them the partnership was legitimate. I blocked them. They'd participated in spending fraudulent money. They'd known it wasn't right. 18 months later, I expanded the solar farm. Added 20 acres, increased output to 18 megawatts. Negotiated new power purchase agreements, legitimate ones with proper regulatory approval, using only my verified ownership authority. I ran into Jake at an industry conference. Awkward, but he approached me. I wanted to apologize. For believing Megan's promises. For not questioning how she could offer me a management position for a business you owned. She was convincing. That's how fraud works. I meant it. Jake had been genuinely deceived. She destroyed a lot of trust. Made everyone question legitimate renewable energy projects. Jake looked uncomfortable. Utilities are doing extra verification now. Slows everything down. Good. Verification prevents fraud. I looked at him directly. Megan could have asked to partner legitimately. Could have proposed actual collaboration. Instead, she forged documents and committed securities fraud. The consequences are hers. He nodded slowly. Fair. On quiet evenings now I walk my solar farm. Rows of panels converting sunlight to electricity. The 40 acres I designed, financed, and built. Property Megan tried to co-opt with fake partnership documents and fraudulent energy contracts. The farm still generates power. Still operates under legitimate agreements. Still exactly what I built. Megan leased it as family partnership. Collected $340,000 in fraudulent advances. Created contracts obligating power delivery she couldn't authorize. But the Energy Board found the forgeries during routine compliance review. The power contracts became criminal evidence. And Megan's renewable energy fraud collapsed into federal charges and 8-year prison sentence. The solar farm is still mine. Still generating clean energy. Still exactly what I built. And that's worth more than any fraudulent partnership could ever justify destroying.